Love is a synthesis and synchronicity of all complementary opposites. So anything that we perceive imbalanced, we're conscious of one side, unconscious the other. We split our full conscious into conscious and unconscious sides. We store those imbalances in our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind makes us associate with anything that reminds us of those things we liked and disliked or supported and challenges, and reiterate and compounds the various illnesses. The quote illness that we label is either too much or too little of some chemistry that is autonomically initiated that's affecting the structure or the functional enzymes of the cell in most cases, and therefore we get symptoms from that that are heightened or lowered. And if we know how to interpret those, cell-specific, we can actually trace it back to what autonomics it is. And then what happens with the autonomics go back to human perceptions. And then the human perceptions has been my area of expertise, is tying the relationship between these perceptions back into the cell physiology. Now, the parasympathetic side, when you feel really supported, imagine if you were nothing but supported, you just rested all day and you just ate all day and you didn't do anything else, you would have a new set of symptoms. Most people think that stress that causes the sympathetic nervous system is a source of all disease. And I don't find that to be true at all. Any imbalance, because you can actually lay on your butt and not do anything and overeat and get too much parasympathetic and have no accountabilities, no responsibilities, no challenges whatsoever. And you can get atrophy, you can get boils, you can get symptoms of all types. So illness is not that which just challenges us, it's also over support. Just like if you take a child and you over support it and give it no responsibilities, it creates psychopathology as far as its self-worth. And if it gets challenged, it becomes precociously independent. If it's over supported, it becomes juvenilely dependent. So those are psychological and psychobehavioral responses from too much support or too much challenge. Well, so too at the cell level, symptoms can be either sided. And most people don't describe that. They think that the autonomic, the parasympathetic is all for good and the other is for bad. I differ on that. My physiology studies don't lead me to that conclusion, but it leads me to the idea that we're here to have both. In fact, they found in human development that maximum growth and development occurs at the border of support and challenge, where challenge and support are seen in balance synchronously. That's when maximum wellness occurs. And by the way, that is also the same exact state where you have a state of grace, gratitude, and which opens the heart and makes you feel love. It also makes you inspired because you see the hidden order in the apparent chaos and you're having an awe moment. And you're also the most present and the most certain. So maximum growth occurs at the border of order and chaos, or support and challenge. And that's also where gratitude, love, certainty, and presence and inspiration and enthusiasm live. So that's why gratitude and love are still the greatest healers on the planet. If you anything that you're not grateful for, anything that you're judging, anything you're not loving in your life, anything you're not inspired to experience, is going to show up in the autonomics in the form of signs and symptoms. Now, if we get overly supported, the parasympathetic comes on and dominates. And when that occurs, you get a different set of enzymes from a different transmitter, acetylcholine, get a different set of enzymes, phosphatase, get a different thing at the genes and the histones, which is now more of a acetylation, not a methylation. And that opens up the histones from the genes and allows transcription to occur. Because when you're parasympathetic at night, our genes tend to multiply and mitotic divisions occur. And under the day, it tends to shut it down and slow it down. And there's circadian rhythms and cycles in our body that are designed to maximize our performance. And so that's why we have certain hormones go on at certain times of the day, peak of the day, and other ones come on at night. And we have a circadian and ultradian rhythm that goes on in our cycles. And that's why if we're really doing what we love and loving what we do, and we're real grateful for life and we're inspired and we're living according to our highest values and we're congruent, we tend to line up with the normal circadian rhythms and we don't have life lags going on, which are disturbances which cause illness. And illness, I like to think of is when we are judging and imbalanced in our perspective. And wellness is when we're actually loving and grateful for our perspective. In fact, I use the word I versus we. I'll use illness as I am separate from the world because I'm too proud or too humble to admit what I see in the world around me as me. And wellness is where I and you, or the other people around me, are reflective. And I see that whatever I see in them is in me. The seer, the seeing, the seen are the same. So wellness is where we are together, and I have a reflective awareness, and I'm not exaggerating or minimizing myself or them, and I have equity and equanimity. And illness is whenever I exaggerate or minimize, because when I put people on pedestals, I activate my parasympathetic. When I put people in pits, I activate my sympathetic. So anytime we judge, we're literally throwing our physiology out of balance because we're throwing our psychology out of balance. And you can't really have an imbalanced mind without an imbalanced body. And what's interesting is when you inhale, you activate the sympathetic. When you exhale, the parasympathetic. And so that's why when we have emotions, our breathing is different. It's arrhythmic. That's why there's an old proverb that the ancient yogis have said, that when the mind wanders, so is the breath. When the breath wanders, so is the mind. And if you have a perfectly balanced breath, it tends to balance the mind and balance out the autonomics, and also increases longevity and healing. In fact, they found out when you're actually living according to your highest values and you're doing actions according to priority, the blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain, which is the orchestra leader that brings order to the entire physiology through the autonomics, and activates telomerase and gets the telomeres on your genes to live longer, because when you're living by your highest values, you're more likely to achieve. And when you achieve, you tend to give yourself permission to achieve something greater over a longer period of time. And your telomeres are responding to make sure you can live to fulfill that dream, that vision. That's why I said if you're labeling yourself an immortal soul, is not unwise to have immortal goals, because you have the capacity to live longer by having some meaning and something inspiring that you can pursue. And when you live by your highest values, the autonomics come more into balance. And when you're mindful and not half full is when you're seeing support without challenge, or challenge without support. But when you're mindful, you're seeing both of them synchronously. I've said in my breakthrough experience programs, I've taught nearly 30 years, that love is a synthesis and synchronicity of all complementary opposites. So anything that we perceive imbalanced, we're conscious on one side, unconscious on the other. We split our full conscious into conscious and unconscious sides. We store those imbalances in our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind makes us associate with anything that reminds us of those things we liked and disliked, or supported and challenges, and reiterate and compounds the various illnesses. We have what we call promoters or initiators, then promoters, and then compounders. Initiators are initial moments when we have an imbalanced perspective. Promoters are things that remind us, that we associate with that keeps reminding us and digging up things we haven't brought to balance in our mind, that's stored in the subconscious mind. And then compounders are things that then associate with those, and then we end up having these insidious stimuli that actually aggravate our symptoms in our body. And the symptoms are coming up to let us know we have an imbalanced mind that we haven't addressed, and we can't escape what we haven't loved in life. It's running our physiology. And people sometimes don't see that. It's so subtly layered upon layer into our subconscious that we don't realize that we're responding that way. But anything that reminds us of an original imbalanced perspective that we associate with it can trigger an accentuation of the symptoms that were initially activated because of it. So I'll summarize by saying that if we have a balanced mind, we have a balanced autonomics, we have a balanced neurochemistry, we have a balanced epigenetic impact on our genes, which affects the balancing of our protein manufacturing, which then affects our enzymes and our structural proteins, and then we end up having wellness again. But this starts from a balanced mind, and I define love as the perfect balance. It's a balance of opposites. It's a synthesis and synchronicity. It's a synchronous time and a synthesis of pairs of opposites. Thank you for joining me for this presentation today. If you found value out of the presentation, please go below and please share your comments. We certainly appreciate that feedback. And be sure to subscribe and hit the notification icons. That way I can bring more content to you and share more to help you maximize your life. I look forward to our next presentation. Thank you so much for joining.